I have had this build recommended to me so much. Matter of fact, every build that involves Monte Carlo in some way has been recommended to me hundreds of times, maybe even thousands. And not that I don't like Monte Carlo method and the builds that it presents, just some of them are kind of boring. This one is not boring, as it breaks out an old exotic that I think many of us have not used in a really long time. So today, gents, we're actually going to be taking the exotic Sunbracers, combining it with our new exotic brought to us here in D2, Monte Carlo. And the grenade of choice, obviously, considering we're using Sunbracers, is solar grenades. So ladies and gents, I present to you Sun Carlo. Huh? Oh man, I like this name so much, I might name my second child after this name. Now, I don't promote dress wearing on a regular basis, but I've been getting a lot of you guys that are Warlock mains complaining that I don't make any Warlock builds. But this one piqued my interest simply because it's actually creative. You see, Sunbracers comes with the exotic perk Helium Spirals. Solar grenades burn longer, but melee kills also restore them. Now, some really cool stuff about this perk is number one, the duration that solar grenades gains is actually doubled. So a solar grenade, when you throw it, by itself lasts for 4.5 seconds. Now, just having Sunbracers on without even proccing it with a melee almost doubles our duration here of solar grenades. So going from 4.5 seconds to nearly 8.5 to 9 seconds. 8.5 to 9 seconds. That is quite a duration, especially for a grenade. Even yesterday when we talked about oppressive builds and we brought up things like lockdown with vortex grenades on the hunter class, even that doesn't last as long as these solar grenades. Now, upon getting a melee kill, you'll actually proc the perk Sunbracers Ready. Actually says it right there at the bottom left hand of your screen. Now, that status effect just simply means that your Sunbracers are ready to go to Pound Town. You've got 5 seconds to pull the trigger. But what's so beautiful about this is that when you throw the first grenade, that is when the status effect actually changes and goes from being Sunbracers Ready to just Sunbracers, and it refreshes the timer. So there really isn't no rush to start throwing grenades. Like if you happen to get a melee kill off on something, but you're not close to the enemy that you want to throw grenades on, don't start chucking grenades yet. Get closer to your enemy and then start throwing them. And that refreshes that timer, and now you got a full 5 seconds there to throw as many grenades as you can possibly throw. Now, the biggest issue with this exotic, at least for me in previous sandboxes, is that it always required a charged melee kill. As again, it states it needs to be a solar melee kill and not just a melee kill by itself, which is where something like Monte Carlo comes in hand, as it grants us the perk Monte Carlo method. Dealing damage with this weapon reduces your melee cooldown and grants a chance to fully charge your melee ability with each kill. Beneficial for so many different things, and I know there's going to be so many builds right now in this comment section being recommended, which I'm always open for, especially for stuff we haven't seen. But it's super beneficial here, as Sunbracers will not work unless you have a charged melee. Now, there are ways to work around this. Monte Carlo is by far the most efficient way to getting your melee back. But now that we're in Armor 2.0, if you have enhanced perks, we can now start applying some beautiful things here to Sunbracers to make them extremely deadly. Number one, enhanced momentum transfer. Causing damage with grenade greatly reduces your melee cooldown. Now, considering you're already going to be proccing the Helium Spiral perk and expending all of these different solar grenades everywhere, causing damage with all of those nades are going to be bringing your melee cooldown back. Now, similar to something like Impact Induction, there probably is a small cooldown here. I don't have the duration there, but I was actually observing it earlier, and it seems to have just a slight cooldown. So for example, if I throw like the first solar grenade after doing my melee, it seems to proc momentum transfer immediately, and then it doesn't seem to proc until my last grenade. So it seems like there's like a 3 to 4 second cooldown in which momentum transfer actually procs. And that's the same with something like Impact Induction. So something to just keep in mind, especially for people that aren't going to be using this with something like Monte Carlo. You're depending on this perk greatly to recharge our melee here. Now, another perk that I added to Sunbracers, which is really nice, but it's one of those things kind of like traction. You got to get used to it a little bit, and that is Fastball. Fastball actually increases our grenade throw distance. This is nice for a number of things, especially if you're trying to hit targets from way off. But again, it's one of those things you have to get used to. Like the moment you throw in Fastball, especially with something like solar grenades, you'll find yourself overthrowing your target. Now, to me, I think it's a beneficial perk to have. It's just one of those things that you have to get used to in terms of like muscle memory, where you point your camera angle whenever you throw your grenades. things like that to allow you to be a little more accurate. Now, another thing that we added to this build, considering that we're going to be getting lots of grenade kills, is we actually went enhanced ashes to assets, as that allows us to gain more super energy upon getting grenade kills. Now, next to it, I did go enhanced bomber, which allowed for me to get my grenade back, but I really don't think bomber is the way to go. You see, we're not really waiting on a grenade to come back. We're more or less waiting on our melee to come back. And considering that, I felt like distribution is probably the better route to go here, as popping your class ability actually reduces all of your ability cooldowns. So again, guys, there is ways to use this build without Monte Carlo. Ideally, you would want to have like many of your armor pieces, maxing out your strength over everything else. And I believe tier 10 strength is 32 seconds in cooldown, right? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but 32 seconds on top of momentum transfer, especially if it's enhanced, distribution, all those things should get you your melee back extremely fast without you having to rely on Monte Carlo. And we're not even talking about things like ballistic combo if you happen to be using weapons with like anti-barrier rounds. Those things should pretty much always secure a melee back. Monte Carlo is just like the easy way of doing this. Now, the subclass of choice. This was a difficult one because there was two subclasses I really wanted to utilize this with. First is Top Tree. Top Tree actually has a couple things that make it really good. Number one, you've got Winged Sun, which allows you to engage your enemies mid-flight, throw grenades while gliding. The beautiful thing about that is that it allows you to proc things like Heat Rises, which states that airborne kills recharge your grenade and melee energy. Beautiful synergy here. Problem is, it's Top Tree Dawnblade. Like, I like Top Tree Dawnblade out of all the Dawnblade subclasses, but in terms of PvP, most Warlock users will choose Bottom Tree Dawnblade over Top Tree. And that's not going to be the case probably next week, considering that Dawnblade Bottom Tree is getting a nerf. But the other subclass that works very well with solar grenades and Sunbracers is the Attunement of Grace subclass. This is, of course, Well of Radiance, and there's a number of things that work well here. Number one, when you strike an enemy with your melee ability, you inflict some burn damage, but you also proc Empower. Now, Empower actually gives a buff to everyone that is around you when you land that melee hit. The sad part is that it doesn't buff our grenade damage, which is super unfortunate because it would benefit this build so much. Like, it buffs weapons, but it does not buff our grenade damage. Now, from a support perspective, proccing something like Sunbracers can result in you just giving everyone a healing grenade, as this subclass comes with the perk Divine Protection. Holding your grenade button drops a blessing that heals allied targets and drops overshields that you and your allies can pick up. I actually use this a bunch inside of PvP, as even though Top Tree Dawnblade has better synergy in terms of just giving you your melee back, Middle Tree keeps you alive, allowing you to push into a group of enemies with an overshield and full health, and simultaneously dropping grenades all over the place. Oh, and the shotgun that I was using in this build was actually the Slug Shotgun Good Bone Structure. I was just doing a lot of hip firing. I wanted to make sure I didn't kill my enemies, so I just hit them in the body and followed up with the melee. That way I was always proccing Sunbracers in PvP, because it's kind of a difficult thing to do, considering that if you use like a regular shotgun, 9 times out of 10 you're going to kill your target. Good thing about a slug shotgun, I think it only hits like 147 per body, so it makes for easy cleanup and a good way to proc Sunbracers. Now, with all that being said, this is a really nice build, but my god, does it have some limitations. Number one, solar grenades actually do pretty decent damage. One solar grenade here with Sunbracers is knocking Greg's health down by almost 1/3 of his health, maybe a little more. So you think one grenade that does that much damage? Good lord, Sunbracers with all these solar grenades being thrown should do massive amounts of damage. No, it doesn't stack. This has been a bug that has been plaguing Sunbracers since it was first conceived. For some reason, even now, solar grenade damage does not stack. It's actually more beneficial if you were just to throw one grenade on a target that you're trying to do a lot of damage to, then maybe throw a grenade or two to some of the other enemies, and then proceed to throw another grenade toward the tail end of that duration of the first grenade to continue carrying over damage. But considering that solar grenades, especially with Sunbracers, has an 8-second duration, you're not really able to take advantage of Sunbracers, at least not completely. I guess it's great for clearing out a room, especially if you have something like enhanced ashes to assets. It's excellent. But in terms of being a potential DPS monster, and it could be, if solar grenades would just stack in damage, Sunbracers and solar grenades are still bugged. Now, I'm not sure if this is something more related to the Sunbracers exotic gauntlet itself, or maybe it's just solar grenades in general. What I do know is that next season, we're probably going to be looking at artifact mods that enhance our solar subclasses. Considering that this past season has been like all about arc and void, next season will probably be about solar. And I hope to God we can actually get a fix here for solar grenades before those artifact mods ship out. This is actually a really fun and creative build. Sun Carlo would probably be a main build for many. Even in certain pinnacle activities, you probably could see some use from these exotic gauntlets. But until Bungie actually fixes solar grenades, then this build, as well as Sunbracers, will always be considered an ad clear only exotic. Well, that is our Sun Carlo build. Try it out for yourselves, guys. Again, Monte Carlo very much makes this build easy. It's essentially this build on training wheels. But there are ways to proc this same build without having to rely on Monte Carlo, which of course frees up that exotic slot. The main thing is solar grenades in general need to be fixed, and they need to be fixed before the next season comes, because I would love to see some artifact mods that benefit our solar subclasses and this Sunbracer build actually do the correct amount of damage. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.